So I have pleasure of introducing Ashima Sharma today as our track speaker. So she works as Director of Retail Lending Services, Project Management Office for PNC Bank. Ashima's team works on compliance, regulatory process, improvement projects, and successful delivery of multiple strategic programs with multi-million budget portfolio. She has established a consistent methodology and process for project management at PNC. She specializes in change management and adoption. With her leadership, the team has successfully closed over 120 projects on time and within budget. Ashima manages a team of over 70 project managers and business analysts responsible for varied scope of projects, including process, procedural change, training, and technology. That's very impressive. Thank you for taking the time to talk today. She's a certified PMP and holds a Master of Business Administration with a major in project management. And she has 15 years of project management, business analysis, and leadership experience. She's an avid reader and a frequent speaker at leadership and project management forums. She lives in Springboro, Ohio, with a husband and 2 children, 13 and 8 years. She has been volunteering with Dayton chapter of PMI since 2008 and is currently president of the Dayton chapter of PMI. She volunteers for Grow Up Great to support early childhood education. She started as an employee business resource group chapter of Women's Connect at PNC that promotes women in leadership. So I'm already impressed. So I can't wait for her to get started.
Only impressive part.
So I'll just step aside and let her do the talking. Please join me in welcoming Ashima for her symposium.
Thank you. I would love for you to hold the applause till later if you are truly impressed, not by the credentials, but by the presentation itself. Thank you, Shrikant. That was really nice of you to read all of it. I didn't expect that. One lesson learned and change that I found from this bio, we are actually supposed to be doing as directors and executives at PNC a bio as we start. Executive profile. And I did this 5 years back at PNC, and if you put your children's names or children's ages in there, you gotta keep changing it. They grow up so fast, so there's change right there for you. So today, we're gonna start, like I alluded to the ones that were early here, we're gonna start with a thinking exercise. I want us to do 5 minutes of that form. How many are done with that form? Impressive, look at you guys. Like 10 of them are done, 90 more to go. So we need to fill that form, and I would use that as we go through this session. So one of the things that is really relevant in that form is one change. It could be personal or professional. Don't overthink it, just complete it. Write a few words or many words as you see fit. And I'll give you those 5 minutes to do. Other things we'll do is we'll discuss your change experience from those forms, and that's why the thought process, the wheels turning, is very helpful. And this is an interactive session, so what I put on there is we want to keep it interactive. We want to create a forum for discussion, so there are no absolutes. When it comes to change and when it comes to relevancy in project management, you guys have a lot of experience yourself, and there are no absolute rights or wrongs. So I will not be able to give you a formula at the end of this session. If you go out there and use this formula, it's gonna be successful. Ain't gonna happen. So really, we are here to think, to start a process in our minds of what will work, what has worked for others, because every situation is different, every project's different, and so forth. So we'll talk about that. Change factors, we're going to be talking about what factors influence changes and what are those drivers of a change, because we have a lot of change that drives our organizations these days. So future, of course, our interest is in future. We're gonna talk about that. What do you think? Are we gonna stay relevant? Is project management a thing of the past, or we're going to be in the future as well? So we'll talk about that a little bit. What's next? Of course, you came to relevant project management session. So we will be talking about what's next, what's the right thing to do, relevant do's and don'ts for a PM, and then, of course, leadership. It's important, right, for project managers. So we're going to do that as well. And then a Q&A. Maybe we'll have time, maybe we won't, but we're going to make it so interactive that we may not even need Q&A. So that's where we are going to be. Thinking exercise first. Everybody brought their bagels and coffee and your brain? So let's write. I'll give you about 5 minutes there. going to time us? All right. We're going to then start talking. Everybody done pretty much? Okay, great. All right, so let's talk about some influencers, like I said. The first thing that really comes to mind when I think of change is a transition curve, right? So there is that. There is the diversity of workforce that we see every day. We're going to go to these in detail. I'm just bringing them up so our interaction and discussion is a little more robust. Stickiness to the job. How many have stayed in their job for more than 10 years? Which is awesome if you have. That's great. These days, it's the numbers going lower and lower for folks who have stayed in the same job for more than 10. Today's projects are different. We've got Agile, we've got all these great things, you know, those tools that we now tend to use much more. External uncertainty, we've seen a lot of that with Harvey and Irma and all of that, right? So there's also regulations that are external to the organization, so there's a lot of that. So let's discuss. What have you guys found in your interaction or in your paper that you wrote? What changes have you had in your life, personal or professional? Anyone wants to start? Yes.
Well, involuntary job termination 3 times for various reasons.
Okay. That's anybody else in the same boat or similar boat?
Same issue.
Right, absolutely. So how did you handle it? Tell us your name too.
Oh, I'm Frank Fons.
Thank you,
I'm
Frank.
from HCSC, which is Blue Cross of Illinois, Texas, Montana.
That's great.
How did I handle it? I'm joking around, but I'd say badly the first time, thinking, oh, this is ridiculous. How could they let me go? I'm
Right.
smart, I work hard, etc. But basically what I learned from it is I can't change the environmental circumstances that were economic, but I can change and influence how people are perceiving what I have to offer and how I communicate.
There you go.
So it was humbling.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I was very young, I got my MBA and I thought I knew it all.
Don't we all?
Solved their problems
Yeah.
It was very humbling, but they downsized and said, well, we really don't need this many people. I was quick to go for good reason.
Right. Yeah, organizational reasons had nothing to do with you, most likely.
The second time the third were more economic when I was in banking that just
Right.
things happened where they made decisions to get rid of our entire department. So.
There you go. Similar experience there?
Very similar, except I had the heads up of, I'm thinking it's coming because they walked my boss out the door, 9 months before. So I decided to take a proactive approach, continue to keep my head down, get what we needed done. However, I created a list of things I wanted if I were ever walked out the door. And once I had that, it kind of freed me from the fear of is this going to happen today?
Right.
Because I felt I was prepared for it. The eventuality that yes, here I am in conversation.
Absolutely.
So, at least it prepared me for that moment. But what came next, I wasn't prepared for because I didn't think that far. So,
Yeah. So the 9 months that you had between your boss being walked out and you knew that it's coming, you were prepared during that time. You were preparing yourself for it. So the time lag actually helped. It can be very devastating for some people to have that time lag. When's the shoe going to drop, right? But you did a great job with that. So that's awesome. You didn't tell us your name.
Helen McCullough.
Helen. Thank you, Frank and Helen, for sharing. So other changes? Yes.
This is a personal change, but it's also impacted my life professionally because of the way I handled it, went about it. After being single for 54 years, I decided to get married at the age of 54.
That's awesome.
And it sort of became a project because I made the decision I want to be married. I'm tired of being alone. I don't want to go old alone.
Right.
And I sort of turned it into a project, and I made a list of things I needed to do to get it done. I joined dating websites. I started reaching out to friends to see if they could set me up with people. I had to open my mind up
Mm-hmm.
because I was very untrusting. Some of the people that I met along the process sort of made me feel, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. But I had to go
Exactly.
People and learn to see who's a good person and who's not a good person.
That is awesome. Thanks. What's your name?
Anna.
Hannah, thank you so much. That was a great example of a personal change, right? One day you stand up and you go, oh, I'm going to change how I used to think. That is awesome. Did you see one commonality in these changes? It's all up here. It's all in the mind, right? So how you handle it, the first time Frank handled it versus the second, the third, got better and better, right? So how would you do it if you would do it again? That was a question that I wanted all of you to think about, is would it be different this time, or would you have the same flailing hands and arms baby reaction to the change again? Maybe that's the right reaction to that change. I don't know. Any other examples of changes? Yes. Go ahead.
My change, similar with the industry changing. I was in food service for so long, consumer packaged goods, worked at Sara Lee, General Mills, and a lot of the companies, are downsizing, as you know, with now Shiner Brands, there's Sara Lee. And being in that space, I knew change was coming, downsizing, and not just that I couldn't go somewhere else. I decided to go back to school. That's when I started working on my MBA and wanted to get certified in project management. And during that change, I did get let go, but I continued with school. And then I stepped outside my comfort zone. I did contracting. And I went to U.S. Foods. And again, we were talking about changes after being there a year and a half. I was like, okay, now this is a big change. I want to move to a completely different industry after working consumer packaged goods for so long. And I became actively involved with the PMI, the Chicago Red chapter, volunteering, networking, and just getting out there, asking questions. I wanted to get into healthcare. And actually, I volunteered. I was on a committee for the symposium 2-3 years ago. And with Trans Tech, I actually was with, and I talked to some other, well, your background, I don't know. The lady, she's like, you have the skills. She's like, you just have to redo your resume.
Right.
And they helped me redo my resume and got me into Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that was 2014. And now this year, I'm at Lurie Children's Hospital, and I'm a project manager, so completely changed industry. And as far as doing anything differently, I actually don't have any regrets because I stepped outside my comfort zone and I talked to people, I put it out there, I asked for help, and I utilized my resources network, LinkedIn, and someone stepped out and helped me. And it's like, you most definitely have the skill to be a PM. You have a lot of transferable skills, but one thing you have to be stuck in one. And I realized that. And so once I realized that, I was like, well, I can apply for this, definitely. So I
Right.
definitely know that.
That's great. That's a great story. So she stepped out of her comfort zone, reached out to friends, reached out and said, hey, I'm going to go to school, revamp my skill set, my tool of skills. And there you go. That's session over. She's done it all. No, we're going to talk a little more. So everybody saw what we had there. Everyone's reaction was a little different. It was a situation that was different too for everyone. But one thing that was common was this personal transition curve. So if you look at it, we all go through these emotions. For some emotions are either missing or shorter, and for others, they just elongate themselves. So if you look at this, we've got happiness. Hey, something's changing. We start with anxiety. Is it going to come? 9 months of anxiety. Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And then you go through a happiness phase. Hey, something's changing. You've got fear, threat, guilt, depression. Now, some folks don't go there at all. In this little dip, they don't have to go there because they're good change agents. They just pick themselves up and say, no, I'm going to redo this. Maybe their life situation is such that they can go to school again. They can do MBA like you in your example. So there's a lot of that we control. Which parts of these emotions do you think were our folks that shared going through? There was a lot of these, don't you think? So in your change that you just wrote down, did you go through any of these or no? This is just not ringing true. Some? I'm sure. So one thing to do as a project manager is realize. This is a realization exercise. It is to realize that everybody is a person and they have a transition curve. We are all going through a transition curve. And when we throw change, so we're in the business of change, right? What do we do on projects? We inflict change on people. We inflict change on people. Now it sounds victimizing, there's some victims of the change, but guess what? It is exactly that. You are throwing a process change, a technology, a system change, or something that is going to change the way they live their life. Whether it's not at that scale, it could be at a smaller scale. When they come to work, their system's gonna look completely different. It's not gonna say, hello, Rhonda, it's gonna say, whatever login ID. So there is that change, right, for everybody. And when they go through those changes, there is some level of control that a PM has on them not falling into that pit. And what do you think you can do to help that? Ideas? So go right from maybe happiness and a little bit of fear, right, to gradual acceptance and moving forward. What can we do? It's all on them. What can we do to help? Right. Continuous communication and talking to them one-on-one, trying to understand what their fear is. So first realizing what part of this emotion are they dealing with, where are they in this whole spectrum, and then talking to them, creating a better environment of exchange of information. Go ahead.
I mean, for me, it's about having a good project plan, right?
Yeah.
You've got the fear, you're like, oh my gosh, are we gonna be able to do this? And then you have the steps laid out for how you're going to do it. So
Exactly.
having that project plan and communicating that plan
Right?
is a lot easier than
Organizing it for them and saying, we will get there. We'll get to happy state again, right? Anything else? What do you guys think? Yes.
So I think one of the things you need to address is some of that fear of change itself. Is that even though you communicate, you've got all the right plans in place,
Right.
you are asking people to make dramatic movement when you're talking about transforming an organization at a program level, right?
Right.
So they have to let go of what they're doing today, embrace new technology, embrace new methods and operations, maybe even new tools. And that's at a personal level for everyone. So I think you have to get tighter with them. if you
Right.
will, deeper into their fears, as you're saying, and show them how this new vision, some won't make it, right? Some won't make it.
Yeah, some are just resistant so badly, yes.
And it's interesting, we as project managers have the privilege of being closer to the individuals than many of their supervisors or managers are. So we really
Yes.
can set the environment much more powerfully than
Yeah, absolutely. So more frank conversation can happen with you, then they would feel comfortable with their manager. Yes, go ahead.
So I think from a change manager's standpoint, if you're very good to communicate with regard to what their pain points are, you can lay it out and tell them, look, I'm going to set you back probably 2 weeks in your productivity, for example.
Right.
First holds out. But then after that point, this is what you're going to get at the end.
Yeah.
So they already have that expectation on that. This is their cost, and here's their benefit down the road.
Yes, that's exactly right. One thing that I didn't hear is we're trying to help them. We're going to try to bring them with us, so forth. One thing to hear is we have to go through this change ourselves well. We have to role model going right from that happiness or fear, wherever we find ourselves. So you got to recognize where you are personally. Have you ever seen a project manager go into a project meeting going, this project never ends. This project is essentially boring. This project I cannot deal with anymore. Oh my gosh, another day of problems? You have seen that attitude, and maybe we've had that attitude every now and then. I've had those projects where I feel, some mornings like that. But honestly, you have to get yourself out of that. So understand where we are in this curve. Maybe we've gotten into the guilt piece. Maybe I could have done this meeting better. Maybe we're killing ourselves with the guilt. So we need to get out and go into that top, moving forward, and role model how to do the curve well. That is something that is going to be one mantra for your team. If there is one learning here, is this transition curve applies to everybody. It applies more to you personally. So let's do it well. And so we go from here to the job stickiness. No, actually diverse workforce. So we have multiple generation. Do you know there's something unique going on in the workplace right now? There are 5 different generations in the workforce right now. So we have millennials, the all famous millennials. They have different ways of working. Anybody millennial here? I'm sure there's some. 1, 2, 3. We got 3 millennials. See how we try to understand them, but we also stereotype them sometimes. Like they don't have patience, they have too much entitlement, they've got a trophy life or whatever. All of that is happening in the workplace today. We've also got a, hey, these guys have been in the workplace so long, I'm a millennial, I don't think I'll ever get their point of view. That's not right. So we got to start to understand each other a little better instead of going to those sessions that talk about millennials and that talk about stereotyping millennials. I think we should go to our own session and go talk to those millennials. Go find that millennial and talk to them. What makes you tick? What is that you really find exciting? Okay. There you go. Let's talk to them. Well, my 13-year-old doesn't talk to me at all. So if I try talking to him, I think I will not have success. Cultural understanding. And so there is more and more multinationals now. There's global operations of most companies, right? You work for one, so you've seen it. There's virtual interaction with people, across many oceans and so forth. There has to be a cultural understanding that we are now getting really close to at least accepting that we need to have a cultural understanding. We need to know if they are not going to do it on this timeline, when are they going to do it? Because their way of doing things is such, right? There is a cultural difference in people show up late in a certain culture from where I am. They just show up late. That's their punctuality. Every meeting, they're going to be late. Now, if you're going to get ticked off by that person showing up 2 minutes late, guess what? The rest of the meeting's gone. That's right for them. That is right. It never was for me personally, right? So I have been through this. So I'm sharing a personal example of, you're late again? I used to feel that and think that, and then my whole meeting used to have that flavor to it. So please understand, this is a cultural thing. That's what they do. They're going to be late. That's their punctuality. So there is some of that understanding we need to bring. Accepting delegation. So I have about 77 people right now on the team. I've got managers that manage the PMs, the individual contributors, and I have to delegate constantly. There is nothing that I really can do on my own. It has to be delegated. Now, can I micromanage? In my case, the situation is such that I don't have the time. I can't possibly micromanage. But I have to trust. I have to give it to them, give the vision, tell them, hey, here you go, run this down, run this reporting, or even change in culture, employee engagement. I have to delegate all of those things, and I have no other choice but to trust. And when I do, it is successful. Now, I also have to accept their way of going about that is going to be different than mine. And it always is. It literally has been different because every person's different, right? I come from a very different, thought process than they do. But they approach that differently and maybe even better at times, right? So we have to accept, delegate and accept. Make it personal. So a lot of people say it's professional, it's all business, it's not you, it's not personal. I have never believed in that. That is a saying that is just not right because it is all personal. It better be. For it to be successful, it better be personal. The only visions that move people, that have any capacity of making people work towards them, any transformations that have been successful were personal. They had so much passion, the CEO or the person that brought that transformation in had so much passion behind that vision, they made it happen because they took personal stake in it. And that's where I see that a lot of project managers think it's business. If you have to come in at 7 in the morning and you're working till late at night and you're doing all of the other things, it's not business, it's personal. You take a stake in it. You want it to be successful, so it's personal. Make it personal. The day you make it personal, you start talking from the heart to the people, to the team, to the matrix team that doesn't really report to you and has nothing to do hearing from you, but they will hear you. That's the switch that we need to make. Make it personal. Virtual world. Do we spend enough time making relationships with people who we don't see face to face? Guilty as charged. Honestly, I don't, and I should. I know that. I have a team in Pittsburgh, I have a team in Chicago, so I travel a lot here, and I'm placed in Dayton, Ohio. I've got, actually now I just hired Texas folks. I have Jacksonville team. I'm not there as much because travel is always a constraint, but do I spend the time Skyping them enough? Do I spend the time talking to them, learning about them, knowing them? The ones I'm face to face with, I'm tight with. But the other ones, there's always that difference. You had something to say. Go ahead. Yes. Do you take time? Right. Yeah. So as a PM, you have virtual teams constantly. You don't see everybody anymore, right? Is that correct assumption? That is my case. So I know that everybody is dealing with the same. Do you spend time enough to bring them into the team environment? Do you talk to them separately outside a meeting? A lot of times I've seen meetings now, have you maybe not seen this, but I've seen meetings, I go to a meeting, there's a lot of people calling in, of course, right? So all there is basically a beep. Nobody asks them the name, beeped in. How can you do that? You can't do that. They're people. You got to recognize them. You got to let them tell you they joined. You got to take their opinion. You got to go a little out of the way to ask them, what are you thinking about this topic? And that is something that we sometimes do, but lack of time takes us to not doing as well. So think about the virtual world out there. Yes?
To your point, I just took a class on matrix
Mm-hmm.
management, and one of the exercises they had us do was literally a circle of influence. So they,
Yeah.
people that you sit near, then the people on your teams, and like we did this, and all these people that you really were, what you said, they were recommending that you figure out who these people are that you need to make connections with.
Right,
That's a really
absolutely.
good exercise that you can do.
Who is in your circle and
Yeah,
who's
in
out?
your immediate circle, but yet, people that you have interactions with who you don't you're not co-located with.
Right.
And then even further out.
Then spend extra effort
Yeah,
on getting
exactly.
them in your circle.
Exactly.
So broaden your circle, as you said. That's awesome. That's great. So if you're writing something down, right, broaden your circle of trust. Job stickiness, that's a topic that's close to my heart because honestly, there's no loyalty left. That's what we hear about. There's both sides of that story, the employee loyalty versus the organizational loyalty. We heard some of the stories in the personal changes or professional changes. People are not sticking to their jobs. There is just not that stickiness left anymore. Why do you think they were before? I've heard people 40 years in the same job, and like, when I started, I don't think I can ever be 40 years now, right? So what do you guys think makes people stick? Yes?
I actually work in a company where the culture is an old
Hmm.
culture, and there are people there who have been there 20, 30, 40 years.
Right?
And I've seen lately a change because when top management made changes, they're bringing in younger people,
Hmm.
and they're forcing a new culture onto the company.
Right.
And so I see the struggles that the older people are going through, and they feel like the company is no longer being loyal to them. Because they
Right.
started out all these years, but now they're being forced to go through all these changes. Some of them are being let go
Hmm.
because they don't fit into the plans to create a new culture. So I see it on a daily basis, and I'm more on I'm a new employee to this company. I've only been here 4 years, but I'm an older person,
Right.
so I can relate to what they're going through, and I feel for them. But I also understand that a company needs to progress and have its
Yeah. So I'll allude to you a strategy secret. A strategy secret is never let's get all the young people in and all the senior people out. That's never a strategy. Honestly, if that is the strategy, that's just a company doomed for not succeeding. But I will tell you that strategies are usually, I have a completely new set of goals. I have a completely new revenue goal. I have a completely new system goal or technology goal. I'm going to get completely, so banking, we are going through a revolution, right? Mobile banking and all of those things. Those are strategy pieces. Now, who sticks with the strategy? Usually young people have no problem changing the course. All right, I can go here. And the ones who've been there 40 years have a harder time sometimes. So it's not all 40 years tenured employees. It's people who were good change agents stayed, and the ones that were not didn't. So there is a little bit of dynamic that goes on it on the face value. It seems like that's what's happening. They're letting all the, and I don't know your company strategy honestly at all, but that's what it looks like, but dig a little deeper, like go beneath the surface a little bit, and you'll see that there is so much more of a chance of you staying because you're a better change agent. So there is no reason for any of us to think, hey, we're a certain age, and that's why we don't have a chance. We have a chance because your transition curve is rock solid. You don't have a curve. You have a straight line. You go from happiness to accepting and moving on. And that's where the change, that's why we're talking here today. That's about being relevant. If every one of us here takes one thing away, it is we need to look at what we're doing. So let's not look at that's their strategy, but we have to look at what are we bringing to the table, right? So how quick is our personal curve? How quick can we change and transition in? Thank you. Somebody left and they came back. I thought that I'm losing people. Yes.
I work for government in Lake County, and the federal government, they're starting to experience what they're calling a retirement tsunami.
Uh-huh.
And all in government, traditionally, people just never leave. Start working. But all of them are to the point where they're retiring, and we saw the mainframe system, who's going to support that.
Right.
So I went to a conference last year, a federal government conference, and it was almost like everyone was talking about millennials.
Yeah.
Why are you talking about millennials? And I realized, because that's who has to fill in a lot of these positions.
They do.
It's a tsunami. And there was a speaker there, and I really recommend, if you're struggling with the millennial generation, Gabriel Bosch, B-O-S-C-H-E. She is a millennial, but she speaks and explains like the myths or the way we misinterpret based on our upbringing, what they're like, and how we can, and how to work together with them in the workplace.
That's great.
She has some, small little hooks and things, and but be careful. She doesn't send out a lot of emails. You can always talk to them. But she is really a good resource if you're struggling with understanding millennials, and the government really does need to change.
Yeah.
And promote their jobs in different ways so that
Right.
they're attractive to them.
That's great. Does she give parenting advice as well? Parenting advice? I need some of that. We just hit teenage and it's tough. All right. So yeah, social responsibility. These days, you're hearing more and more about people going green, right? Companies going green, doing a lot of things in the community, helping the community grow, develop. The Grow Up Great program that you heard about from Shrikant, that's a program that PNC has for early childhood education support. So clearly, we all want to be a part of the community. We all want to do something good, pay it forward to the community. And please help your organization as a PM. Do those projects. Think about those social responsibility pieces, because that's what creates job stickiness. Millennials look for that when they're looking for a company to work for. And I think we would all love to look for that. Challenge, so that's another thing. Are we challenged enough in a job? So stickiness isn't happening because they're not feeling satisfied from a job. It's a PM job, but they don't even call me a PM. I'm not, I'm doing this day in and day out, and it's becoming monotonous. So I had a situation like that where I wasn't challenged enough. My first job, which was not first job, but first job in this career path, which I was basically a developer, and I was doing the same thing over and over. And as you know, if anybody has been a developer or is a developer, there's a copy-paste component a lot that happens. You're writing the same code over and over and over. And it got really monotonous because I was not interacting so much with people, and that's where I was not challenged enough. And I'm a people person, as you can tell, I need to talk to people. So I moved away from that job, so the stickiness wasn't there for me. Learning and growth. Are you, as project managers, helping put people in the roles that they aspire to? Even though you cannot really move them in actual job grade or the job role, but you can give them that role on a project. So you have a BA who aspires to do project management. Give them tasks on your project. Make them your project manager. Make them your ally. And you are basically helping them grow, develop, advance. And that's something that a PM starts to think about, engaging that team. That BA is going to ask to work with you again, over and over. They're going to stay with you, basically. So yeah, there is that learning and growth component. Anybody done this in their job where they look at what skills they bring?
Yeah, actually, we had my company calls it a secondment, so it's like a temporary one-year assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking for someone to manage this really large project, and it's in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. So, and I was working with a chemist who had expressed interest in project management. I'd seen how she worked on my project.
Right.
I nominated her for that job, and she ultimately got it. And every time I speak to her, she thanks me. She is so happy. She's like, thank you so much
Yes.
for nominating me for this job.
You were the foundation for her to, springboard from there. Anyone else looks at the talent of all the people they work with? There's all IT people, you've got stakeholders, you've got all these people that are matrixed to you on a project. There is so much potential to, go ahead, sorry.
I just wanted to mention, because we were talking about job stickiness, millennials.
Mm-hmm.
I am considered a millennial.
Okay.
I have a little bit of a different background on it. One of the things I've talked to people about this and why millennials aren't as loyal to a company or don't stay in positions as long.
Right.
And I believe that a big part of it is just the upbringing. When the generation before ours was raised, they were taught hard work would get you a job,
Mm-hmm.
benefits,
Mm-hmm.
stability.
Right.
There was a different mindset that that was the way that you should go about finding a position and staying in it for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then that grew maybe even monotonous for those people. And so when they grew up and they had children, they told their children, don't do it this way. Find a job, something you love to do.
Right.
Grow, experience, gain exposure, do it differently. And there is no benefits because maybe companies just change.
Right.
And so the second generation came in and they're like, okay, well, I want to find something that's different, challenging, going to build me up and have different exposure to things. So that's where
Right.
maybe some conflict, it's like, oh, well, they're not staying, but it's because their emotional needs and learning growth isn't being met because they've been told, don't stay in this position.
Absolutely.
Because I know, even though my family grew up staying in the job for a very long time,
Yeah.
at the same time, they also said, do something you love.
Right. And everyone should do something they love. It doesn't matter if it's millennials or not. If you're not in the job that you love, my advice, leave it. Life's too short. Life is too short. So absolutely, that is the right advice. However, you're right. Don't repeat the mistakes I made, my child. That is a thing, We've all done it to our kids and maybe even tainted them in certain ways, right? Hey, don't stay with that company because that company was not loyal to me. So none of the companies are. So we generalize a lot based on our experiences, and that's all we got to pass on to our kids, right? So there is some of, certainly that, I also think that, there is that piece of you live and learn, right? They lived and learned. They're part of the story. The times were different then. And now you're living and learning as a millennial with that lessons from them. But at the same time, you will live to learn that there are some organizations that are very loyal, that still actually appreciate tenure, that have so every organization is different, like every person's different, we established that. Every organization is different and has different goals and set of beliefs. Okay, we'll move on. Today's projects, we have Agile. Anybody dabbling with Agile? Awesome, we have half, maybe not half, 25% of us doing Agile. We did Agile, and first time we piloted Agile, we failed miserably because we didn't have the support to be Agile. So our PMO, my PMO that I manage, is a business PMO, and usually Agile applies well to technical projects, as they say. It came from there, but we wanted to apply it to one of our projects, which had a technical component, so it was a technology-heavy project. We said, okay, we're going to go do Agile. The pilot actually didn't assume that there's going to have to be everybody else who's a part, the matrix part of the project, like our compliance teams and regulators, everybody else that's on the stakeholder group, has to be ready for the 2-week time frame. They have to be ready for our stints. They have to review that fast. They have to be agile. Oh, yeah. So we missed that part, and that led us to, hey, we were not ready for agile, and that's what everybody still today we're learning. We cannot shake that belief off. Now, we have successful agile projects in the PMO that we've done, but we cannot shake that belief, because once they have a bad taste in their mouth, guess what? Lesson learned, not going there anymore. Don't repeat my mistakes. Stakeholder relationship. So what do you think about stakeholder relationship? Now, PMI is doing much, much more with stakeholders now than they ever used to do, right? There was a little chapter with 2 pages in there in the PMBOK one time. But then it has expanded because stakeholder makes or breaks your project, right? So anybody seen a stakeholder that is completely aloof and that project was still successful? That would be a miracle. I haven't seen one. So stakeholder is so important and so critical to your project. If you don't stay connected with them daily, day to day, you're basically taking your project to not being successful. And that's something that we don't understand, that those stakeholders are also going through what? The transition curve, exactly. So there is that piece of understanding. Where are they? Are they in the guilt phase? Are they in the depression phase? Are they in the anxiety phase? Where are they at? And helping them get out of that. And being their partner. So it's not stakeholder management anymore. It's stakeholder partnership. It's being their partner, giving them what they need, showing the value. If they're looking good in front of their management, guess what? They like you. Show them the value, be the cheerleader for them. So do you know that PMO has had, at PNC, has had many, many, many successful projects? How much credit do you think we've gotten of those successful projects? PMO is there to execute. We don't get credit. We don't get credit for successful projects. The project manager, yes, pat on the back, good job, do it again. But honestly, there is also that component of the stakeholder going into a meeting going, do you know how much I saved? Millions. That doesn't happen with the PMO. Do you know, PMO, how much you saved? No, because, well, I do, because I have to create value to stay alive for the PMO. But honestly, there is that part of you have to be okay with giving credit, not taking credit, right? Execute, be done, and give it to the stakeholder. Say, hey, you, the big boss, did it great, and then make them look good. Principles over process. So there is that red tape. I'm going to combine those two. Red tape, even perception of red tape, even perception of bureaucracy deems your project unsuccessful. So if there is any of that perception, their perception is their reality. On your project, if you talk a lot about governance and going through toll gates and doing all of those great jargon that we love doing, right, PMBOK is your book to go to and you're always pulling it out, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work for the stakeholders. So let's forget about that. Let's talk, we'll do that. We'll go through toll gates. I'm not saying, take it all out the door. No, we're going to do all of those things, except we're going to keep that minimal and we're going to increase the value. We're going to talk about the value we're creating, the content and the business we're changing. So we have a lot of, so with our bankruptcies, there's a lot, so in the banks, there's a lot of bankruptcies, right? So we've got those bankruptcy area that we're trying to do process improvement for, and there's a project we're running for that. When we talk about that, we cannot continue to talk about our governance structure. That's not important to them. The customer who has filed that bankruptcy is important to them. What process are they being faced with? That's important to them. So our stakeholders have bigger fish to fry than a toll gate review. So we are not talking to our business partners a lot about, we're doing them all, we're taking their signatures, sign-offs, all of those good things, they're reading our charters, doing all of those things. Keep it business focused, keep it business focused. What's the value you're bringing? So external uncertainty, we already talked a little bit about. Industries change so fast. Any examples of industries that have changed because of technology? There's a lot of them. Newspaper, yes. Newspaper is right. What other industries? Uber's changed the cabbing. Retail, yes. Healthcare. Any examples that got wiped out? Blockbuster got completely wiped out by Netflix, right? We've got a lot of that streaming that's going. I think TV, cable, all that is probably doomed a little bit, I think, with all the streaming that's happening with the Roku, Toku, whatever those are, right? All those things, that's really cool. And technology has potential to wipe out industries, we know that. So is banking going to survive? I think so, because that whole Bitcoin thing isn't, I haven't seen it being successful just yet. So there is a lot of that we have to keep an eye on. What is going to happen next? So as project managers, do you read up? Do you think of the future a lot? Do you think about the industry itself and that you are in? And when you bring that perspective to your stakeholders and to your business, you're the best project manager out there. Okay. Organizational transformation. There is a really good TED talk on this. Just go ahead and type organizational transformation. It's a really good talk, and what he talks about is how leadership is so key. And guess what? Project managers are a part of that leadership. It's so key for an organizational transformation. This is a word that our organizations seem to have loved a lot in the recent times, and everywhere you look, has anyone's organization been going through a transformation as we speak? You can all raise your hand. It seems like everybody is anymore. They're just attracted to this word and term. And I think employees and customers are getting more and more weary of those transformations because it's so rampant now. What's this going to do? Oh, this is going to fall flat too. So those types of things. So there is that people, process, technology. Keep it in mind. Top down, if I love it, it doesn't mean that everybody else is going to love it unless you make it personal. Make it personal, convey the vision in a way that it sticks with other people too. If everybody is going to be able to get a communication from you and understand the vision at the passionate level that you do or that the top executive does, then it is going to be successful, then and only then. There is a Harvard Business Review that says in any transformation, we communicate less, or the lack of, by a factor of 10. We should communicate 10 times more than we do at this point, so as organizations in general. So there is a long-term structure and a short-term structure. As a project manager, when you're going through a project, they could be a year long, they could be 2 years, 6 months, whatever. Always think about what's the short term when we're going through this project. What's the process here? What are we going to expect from our team? What are we going to tell them is the right thing to do on the team? So there's some of that leading through that transformation. So we talked a little bit about the future. What do you think? Do you think project management is going to stay important? Yes? Well, my answer is no doubt. Go ahead. Right.
Which has no beginning or end point over project management.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that with regard to being able to address the digital experience that people are going to have and the expectations they have right on their phone?
Yeah, so product management is a little different. Like you said, it's not a unique entity. It doesn't have a close. So product development has to be continuous. So I think that there's going to be much more in the field of product management that's going to be borrowed from project management. But product management is a business as usual. You got to keep R&D, you got to keep product development and all of that. So is that what you were asking, or what's your?
They're basically saying you cannot have project management having a stop and end date. You're always going to be inside continuous improvement trying to address the digital experience that your customers are going to have.
So you're saying project management may not survive in that world because of product development. I think there is some truth maybe to that. There may be some industries that focus on continuous improvement more than project management. But I'll tell you, even they need projects. They need the rigor. They need the scheduling. They need a person who drives. Why does banking need project management? A lot of people look at me and go, what do you even do there? You're not a banker. I'm not a banker. What do I do at PNC Bank? I do projects. What projects could they possibly have? We have a regulation change every week. every week there's projects to be done. So I think even digital industry has projects to be had. So there is a shift. We need to focus on leadership, value, collaboration, and being nimble. If we're going to stick to our set of toolkit that we have, governance, methodology, toll gates, we're going to be out of business. So we need to revamp ourselves, refocus on these things. That's my take on being important. What's next? Get involved with the strategy. Don't just be the execution person that runs after the strategy is set. Get a seat at the table. Absolutely required for the project managers. And how do you do that? Talk to your PMO directors. They need to be at the strategy table and then relay that strategy to you. In fact, take input from you. You have done execution over and over. You know what hurdles you face. So you actually bring the real tactics to it. Soft skills and leadership, we already talked about that. Replacing stakeholder management by buy-in. And that's really important. If your stakeholders are not bought into the project, might as well not do it. Why waste time? Value proposition. So 5 and 10-year plans, like in case of Netflix and Blockbuster, they wouldn't last. 5, 10 years is a too long time frame right now. So we need to make it short, make them short-term plans and strategies. And those projects, we have a rule in the PMO at PNC, and this is my made-up rule. So I've implemented it. It's worked really well. 6 to 9 months. If a project is longer than that, break it down. Phase it. Cannot do any more than that because you lose stakeholder engagement, you lose people. If you're doing a waterfall, even more important to break it down. Break it down into pieces that are bite-sized. Transparency of results and value proposition. So even if your results are not the greatest on a project, please be transparent. Never fudge numbers, never fudge schedules. Don't be scared to make it red. Be transparent. There is still that level of yellow and red is bad. It's not. It's project management. If it's not going in yellow and red, there is a problem. We're fudging something. So let's not do that. Be the first to remove red tape. So whenever there's perception of red tape, what's the project going to do? Fail. What's next? Do less. Say no more. Can we say no? I have a hard time with this myself, but we got to say no. Do less, do better. If you have only so many projects to focus on, you're going to be better. You're not going to be stretched so thin. Personally, too, by the way, this applies. Do less, do better. Keep learning. If you're not evolving and changing yourself, your team, your matrix team, your peers, your organizations are certainly not doing it. Effective change agents, so get out of that personal transition curve faster. Get trained on virtual teams. If you don't have that expertise of making virtual teams your own, get a training. Talk to your boss, get a training on that, and then train others. What's important to the business? We already talked. There is a lot that is to be said about if I am a business stakeholder and you don't know what I do as the core business, I'm not going to be able to connect with you at all. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Unafraid. Do's and don'ts. I've put together some do's and don'ts for us. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is for you to have. If you want to write some, you can. Sandbox. That sandbox environment. If you want to think of one word on a project, what should a project look like? It should be a sandbox where I want to play in. Everybody wants to jump on that project bandwagon. What are those projects that attract people? Those are the creative, constructive sandbox created by the project manager. There can also be the opposite of that. There is a toxic culture on a project because the project manager hates everybody. You are none of them. You guys aren't that. But honestly, we make or break the sandbox. Staying flexible, fluid planning, measuring value scorecard, empathizing. Oh, wow, yes. So, hey, I understand is a very strong and powerful quote. I understand. And then you can follow that with a, but can you please do this? I understand. If there is one phrase you should use so much, it never gets old. It's I understand what you're saying. A lot of times project managers know what they're doing. They go one line straight, linear, and that's not how it's going to be going forward. We have to get relevant. We have to stay connected to the business, to the stakeholders, to the people that work for us. Engaging and simplifying. We talk a lot of jargon. We love jargon. We also have acronyms in banking, and we have a lot of jargon in banking. But project managers love jargon. The new agile, the stand-ups, and the, all that scrums and things like that. Let's not do it. Let's not throw it at our people. You see, there wasn't one word in my presentation that was actually a term. I don't use jargons because I have learned the hard way when I use jargon, I alienate. I alienate people, and I don't want to look so knowledgeable that I alienate people and I cannot connect with them. And that's something that we may want to think about. Don'ts, we also have some don'ts. Don't sell painkillers. So when you're doing a regulatory project or a project that's fixing some problem, that's a painkiller. Sell something that's process improvement. Do a project that actually creates value up front for the business. Better revenue, better cost efficiency. Those types of projects are better projects in general for the organization. So I'm not saying say no to painkiller projects. There's a lot of them that I have in my portfolio, but we have to focus on the vitamins. Control, please don't control. There is a phase called monitor and control. I actually want to change the name somehow. But please don't control. Nobody is going to be controlled by a project manager or by anybody, not even by their mom. So nobody wants to be controlled. Let's not control. Think linear, don't think linear, because if you think, hey, that's the process, that's how we've done it, that ain't going to work. Think circular, non-linear, whichever way you want to go. Find a way to get value. Doesn't matter, you got to. Don't break a process or a rule, of course, but go around it. Find a way. Find a way. There's always a way. There's always a creative way. Distrust. Don't distrust people. Distrust in the head comes out one way or the other. You may not be saying it. You're actually hugging them and saying, I trust you oh so much. They're not hearing any of that if you distrust in your head. So please don't think in the language of distrust. It's not good for anybody. Sticking to triple constraints. So there is a new study on triple constraint that says it doesn't work. There is a triple constraint of value, capability, and scope that is now being commonly accepted. And this triple constraint that we have is actually a little bit obsolete because they're not directly proportional. Cost, scope, and time are not directly proportional. You can provide a lot of value and scope without raising either of the two others. And that's what we have to focus on. There is a win-win. And how do we stay relevant as a leader? There's a few of those. We've talked about role modeling, creating the vision, making it personal, all of the things we've already said, so nothing to go there. Servant leadership. What's servant leadership? The best way of servant leadership is give credit, don't take it. Give credit. I have some wisdom quotes here. I'm not going to read, but you're welcome to read. There's some really wise men, so I thought they must have said something nice. What's the P in project management? It's people. Would you like it? There was only some bullets thrown together. I mean, I can certainly supply that, yes. Okay, what questions do we have? Yes. I have an article on that that I just recently read. I can send that with the materials. Questions? Yes.
So you talked about keeping it short and breaking projects down into phases. So I work in the drug industry, pharmaceutical industry, and as you know, those projects are pretty long, 3 to 5 years, to develop a new drug.
Right.
So I can see where you can take something and,
phase it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have your, well, I get involved when it's actually in phase 3 clinical. So
I see.
So, but you might have your feasibility phase, but things that have to go in parallel. So what I'm struggling with is, as a project manager, I have to manage 2 phases in parallel, and they're with 2 different completely, like the equipment.
Right.
You might have to order some equipment and get that in and qualified.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're doing feasibility studies in the laboratory.
Right,
So
yeah.
that can be a little tricky to manage both of those at the same time.
Well, timing-wise, I mean, if it makes sense to keep it all one, I get it. But I think parallel projects, would you rather do that effort to do parallel projects? versus not create value, right? Not keep them engaged.
But I also
So,
think it's a little bit about delegating, right?
Right.
Maybe have a technical team leader
Yes.
and an equipment team leader, and then you're checking in with both of them.
yep,
right?
find your mix. Out of these pieces, I've thrown out these, little terms and formulas. You have to make your own potion. You have to make it your own and say, what works for me? Right? So there are some sources. So you asked about the source. There are some sources that I used to create this. So I thought I'll share them with you as well. There are some really, really good books out there. In the Harvard Business Review article, it talks about organizational transformations, really awesome. So yeah. Well, thank you very much. Please fill out the surveys before you go. I will really appreciate that. And I appreciate you listening. You were such great listeners. Thank you so much.